sit down. Let me tell you about a man named Malik. Now, Malik wasn't just a soldier. He was a father who fought a 5-year war with one single promise engraved on his heart: to come back home to his 7-year-old daughter, Aaliyah. He carried her last drawing, a simple crayon sketch of a soldier and a little girl holding hands, in his breast pocket through 2 years of hell in the desert. That piece of paper was his shield. It was the reason he survived the ambush in the valley. It was the reason he crawled through miles of sand when the rest of his unit was gone. Every night, under the cold stars of a foreign sky, Malik closed his eyes and heard the same sound: Aaliyah's infectious, high-pitched laughter. That sound was his compass. It pointed him toward home every single day. But when Malik finally turned the corner of his old street, the air felt different. It was thick. It was cold. He expected to see a red bicycle on the lawn. He expected to hear the pitter-patter of small feet running toward him. Instead, he found a graveyard of gray dust and yellow weeds where his life used to be. The house he had bled for, the one he had paid off with every cent of his hazard pay, was boarded up. Heavy plywood covered the windows like bandages on a terminal wound. And there, nailed to the center of the front door he had once painted blue, was a faded, rain-stained document. A legal notice. It said, "This house belonged to a dead man." Before the roar of anger could leave his throat, a shadow moved by the fence. It was his neighbor, Mr. Henderson. But Henderson wasn't smiling. He was trembling. He looked at Malik as if he were seeing a ghost that had no right to be walking. "Malik." Henderson's voice was a whisper, cracked with guilt. "They told us you were gone. The official report. It said there were no survivors. The state took the house within 6 months. They said a child shouldn't be left alone in a house belonging to a dead soldier." Malik's grip tightened on his duffel bag until his knuckles turned white. "Where is she? Henderson. Where is my daughter?" The old man looked at the towering glass skyscrapers in the distance, the empire of gold that loomed over their humble neighborhood. A man named Arthur Sterling, a billionaire who needed a miracle for his public image after that pharmaceutical scandal. He didn't just take her, Malik. He bought her. He turned your daughter into a charity project for the cameras. He told the world she was an orphan of a fallen hero. And he made sure everyone believed the hero was never coming back. Malik didn't scream. He didn't drop his bag. He stood there, as still as a statue made of bronze and desert sand. A soldier knows that in a moment of ambush, panic is the enemy, but inside, his chest felt like it was filled with broken glass. 5 years. 5 years of hell. Just to find out his life had been sold to the highest bidder while he was bleeding for his country. Arthur. Malik whispered the name like a curse. He had heard of Arthur. Everyone had. A man whose face was on every billboard. A man who claimed to be a saint while his companies were under investigation for corporate greed. Malik realized then that Arthur hadn't just adopted Aaliyah. He had harvested her. He needed a story to tell the press, a way to look like a hero. And what better story than the billionaire who saved the daughter of a fallen black veteran? Malik didn't wait. He walked. He didn't take a bus or a cab. He walked 3 miles uphill, his heavy boots rhythmically hitting the pavement, each step fueled by a cold, surgical fury. When he reached the gates of the Arthur estate, he found 12 feet of black iron and a security post that looked like a military checkpoint. The guard, behind the glass, was young, wearing a crisp blue uniform that had never seen a day of real dirt. He looked at Malik's worn fatigues, his dusty boots, and his scarred face. He didn't see a hero. He saw a problem. "Can I help you, sir?" the guard asked, his voice dripping with practiced condescension. "This is private property. If you're looking for the veteran shelter, it's 5 miles back downtown." Malik leaned in close to the glass. His voice was a low rumble, the sound of distant thunder. "I'm not looking for a shelter. I'm looking for my daughter. Her name is Aaliyah, and I'm told she's inside that house with a man named Arthur." The guard laughed, a short, ugly sound. "Mr. Arthur is a very busy man. He's currently hosting a televised charity event for his foundation. And as for the girl, she is under legal guardianship. You're the 4th person this month claiming to be a relative of one of his projects. Now, move along before I call the real police." Malik didn't flinch. He reached into his breast pocket and pulled out that crumpled crayon drawing. He pressed it against the security glass. "Tell Arthur that the man he declared dead is standing at his gate. Tell him I'm not here for an apology. I'm here for my child." The guard's smirk faded as he looked into Malik's eyes. He saw something in those eyes that no amount of money could buy. He saw a man who had already been to the edge of the world and come back. But before the guard could pick up the radio, a black SUV pulled up to the gate, its tinted windows hiding the face of the man who thought he owned the world. Malik didn't try to storm the gate. A soldier knows when he's outgunned, and right now, Arthur had all the high ground. He had the money, the lawyers, and a small army of private security. But more importantly, Arthur had the narrative. To the world, Arthur was the savior of a forgotten child. To the world, Malik was just a ghost who had failed to stay dead. He walked across the street to a small diner, the neon sign flickering in the twilight. He sat at the counter, his eyes fixed on the television mounted in the corner. It was a live broadcast of Arthur's Foundation for the Fallen, and there she was. Aaliyah was standing on a stage decorated with white lilies and expensive silk. She was wearing a dress that looked like it cost more than Malik's entire house. Her hair was perfectly braided, but her eyes, they were hollow. She was standing next to Arthur, who had his hand on her shoulder in a gesture of practiced fatherly affection. He was telling the cameras how this poor girl's father had made the ultimate sacrifice, and how he, Arthur, had stepped in to ensure she had the life her hero father would have wanted. Malik's heart didn't just break. It hardened into a weapon. He saw his daughter being used as a prop, a human shield to protect Arthur's corporate reputation from a recent scandal. Arthur wasn't just hiding Malik's daughter. He was burying Malik's name under a mountain of fake charity. The waitress at the diner, an older woman with tired eyes, noticed Malik staring at the screen. She saw his uniform, the medals pinned to his chest, and the way his jaw was set like iron. "It's a shame," she whispered, wiping the counter. "That poor girl. They say her father died a hero, but sometimes I think being a hero is just a polite way of saying you were forgotten by the people you fought for." Malik didn't look away from the screen. "He wasn't forgotten," he said, his voice low and vibrating with a dangerous energy. "He was just waiting for the right moment to come back." Malik realized then that he couldn't win this battle with a rifle. He had to win it with the truth. He spent the next 3 hours in that diner, using the back of a napkin to map out Arthur's empire. He knew that every fortress has a crack. Arthur's weakness was his pride. He loved the cameras too much. He loved being the hero in someone else's story. If Arthur wanted a hero story, Malik was going to give him one he would never forget. He started to formulate a plan that didn't involve the police or the courts. Not yet. He needed the one thing Arthur feared more than anything else: the light of the truth shining on his darkest secrets. A soldier knows that every fortress, no matter how high the walls or how thick the glass, has a single point of failure. For Arthur, that point wasn't his security team. It was his vanity. Malik watched the live feed on his phone, analyzing the Hearts of Gold gala. He saw the way the caterers moved, the way the press was corralled into a specific corner, and most importantly, the way Arthur kept Aaliyah within arm's reach whenever a camera was pointed in their direction. Malik didn't have a legal team. He didn't have a PR firm. But he had something Arthur had forgotten: the brotherhood. He made 3 phone calls. 3 men he had pulled out of the wreckage in the valley. Men who owed him their lives. They didn't ask questions. They just asked for the coordinates. By midnight, Malik wasn't just a ghost in the street. He was a shadow in the system. One of his brothers, a tech specialist who had been sidelined by the VA, managed to bypass the digital encryption on the city's property records. What they found wasn't just an adoption. It was a transaction. Arthur hadn't just found Aaliyah. He had paid a corrupt official to expedite the paperwork the very day Malik was declared IA. The mistake wasn't a clerical error. It was a calculated harvest. Arthur needed a black orphan of a war hero to soften his image before a major merger. He had literally bought a piece of Malik's soul to save his own skin. Malik felt a cold, surgical fury rising in his chest. This wasn't just a fight for his daughter anymore. It was a mission to dismantle an empire built on the bones of soldiers. At 2 a.m., Malik stood outside the perimeter fence of the estate. He wasn't wearing his dusty fatigues anymore. He had spent his last remaining savings on a crisp, tailored suit, black as the night, sharp as a bayonet. He didn't look like a veteran anymore. He looked like the very thing Arthur feared most: a man with nothing left to lose and the intelligence to take it all back. He watched the last of the gala guests leaving in their limousines. He knew that the media brunch was scheduled for the next morning. That was his window. Arthur was going to present Aaliyah with a legacy scholarship in front of the international press. He wanted the world to see his generosity. Malik was going to make sure the world saw the truth instead. As the moon dipped below the horizon, Malik adjusted his tie in the reflection of a dark window. He looked at the crayon, drawing one last time, before tucking it into his inner pocket. "Hold on, Aaliyah," he whispered into the wind. "The cavalry is coming. And this time, I'm bringing the storm with me." The morning air was crisp, filled with the smell of expensive coffee and the hum of 100 cameras. Arthur was in his element. He adjusted his silk tie and flashed a smile that had been practiced in front of 1,000 mirrors. He started his speech, his voice smooth and dripping with a fake, practiced empathy. Today, Arthur projected his voice to the back of the crowd. We honor the memory of a hero. We honor a man who gave his life for our freedom.
leaving behind this beautiful child. But as I promised the day I found her, she will never be alone. My foundation is ensuring her legacy is one of wealth, not of loss. The reporters began to applaud, a polite, hollow sound. But then, a movement at the back of the crowd caught the lens of a live streaming camera. A man was walking down the center aisle. He wasn't running. He wasn't shouting. He was marching with a rhythmic military precision that commanded the air around him. Malik was wearing his full Class A dress uniform, metals polished to a mirror shine, the Purple Heart pinned over his chest, his back as straight as a bayonet. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. The silence that followed was so heavy it felt like it could shatter the glass walls of the mansion behind them. Arthur's smile didn't just fade, it curdled. He gripped Aaliyah's shoulder tighter, his knuckles turning white. "Security!" he hissed into the microphone. But the guards hesitated. They didn't see a trespasser. They saw a high-ranking soldier in full honors. They saw a ghost that had just walked out of the grave. Malik reached the foot of the stage. He didn't look at the cameras. He didn't look at Arthur. He looked at Aaliyah. "Aaliyah," he said, his voice a low, steady rumble that cut through the morning air. "Look at me, baby girl." The girl lifted her head. For a split second, time stopped. The hollow look in her eyes vanished, replaced by a spark of recognition that hit the crowd like a physical shock. "Daddy?" she whispered. It was a tiny sound, but the microphones on the podium picked it up and broadcasted it to millions of people watching the live stream around the world. Arthur tried to regain control, his voice high and desperate. This is an imposter. This man is a fraud. My lawyers have the death certificate." Malik stepped onto the stage, closing the distance until he was inches from Arthur's face. He didn't raise a hand. He didn't have to. He pulled the crumpled crayon drawing from his pocket, the one Arthur's team had tried to throw away years ago, and held it up for the cameras. "The only fraud here, Arthur," Malik said, his voice lethal and calm, "is the man who tried to buy a soul to hide his own crimes. You signed my death warrant to steal my daughter, but I've spent 2 years in hell coming back for what's mine. And now, the world is watching you fall." As the flashbulbs exploded and the reporters surged forward, Arthur's security team stepped back. They knew a losing battle when they saw one. The hero of charity was gone. In his place was a man being exposed in real time for the theft of a child and the desecration of a soldier's life. The fall of Arthur wasn't just a headline, it was a landslide. By sunset, Arthur wasn't a philanthropist anymore. He was a man under federal investigation, his assets frozen and his reputation shattered beyond repair. But Malik didn't stay to watch the handcuffs click shut. He didn't need to see the villain fall to know that he had already won. He walked out of those iron gates with Aaliyah's hand in his, leaving the glass fortress behind forever. He didn't want Arthur's money. He just wanted his life back. You see, the world will try to tell you that money can buy anything. They'll tell you that power can rewrite the truth, and that a man in a suit is worth more than a man in a uniform. But they forgot one thing about a father's love. It's the only force on this earth that can walk through hell and come out stronger on the other side. Arthur thought he bought a child, but he actually bought his own destruction. Malik proved that a hero isn't defined by the medals on his chest, but by the promises he keeps. He came home to an empty house, but he's leaving with a full heart. Because at the end of the day, no matter how high the walls are or how thick the glass, the truth always finds its way home. And a soldier, well, a soldier never stops fighting until his family is safe. Take that with you today. I'm Brother Marcus, and I'll see you in the next story.